Thank you, Shivani, and welcome everybody to this panel on Roadmap to Transform India as a Global Brand for Industry 4.0. It's my pleasure and privilege to be hosting this panel. To kick this off, I would request each of the panelists to just make a few opening remarks on where they see Industry 4.0 from their own perspective and what, in their opinion, is holding back this development. So, Christine, maybe you begin with your comments.
Sure. Thank you, Ramesh, and delighted to be here on the panel. So today, we really are seeing an acceleration of digital transformation coming into the factories. There was quite a bit globally of companies looking for how they could bring capabilities in, and we've had an ongoing study and engagements that have been happening across the globe, including in India, and there's been challenges that the factories have been facing and utilities have been facing, and now with the pandemic that we've experienced, it has only accentuated as well as accelerated where factories and the industrial suppliers are looking to bring solutions, and it's driven by some of the challenges that were faced during the pandemic, as well as what they were looking to bring in the improvements in its resiliency of operations, its skill and labor shortages. And while some of those things were looked at prior to 2020, the experience of the last year, 18 months has really accentuated the need for it. And one of the biggest aspects of what manufacturers are needing to do is really to understand how they can remotely access, how they can access data, how they can use it in real-time operations and present the data which had traditionally been maybe accessible by just being there present, and now the need for more remote kind of capabilities. So really bringing some of those aspects that we've had in the IT infrastructure and bringing it into the shop floor and the factory. And that's one of the biggest challenges that the industry and partners across the industry are trying to solve in this space.
And what, if you will, Christine, are the constraints that are holding it back at this point?
Yes, so I think some of it is some of the traditional infrastructure that has been there has been built more purpose-built for doing specific operations. And Alliance, and I'll get a bit into the Alliance, like what this is about, the plug-in Alliance, how when you bring multiple players together, take a more open platform approach of bringing these assets together, it'll allow for the ability to bring some of those capabilities in that have been more traditionally closed systems. So I think that is one of the biggest opportunities to really realizing the capabilities that manufacturers are looking for.
Good. Thank you, Christine. Raman, do you want to make a few opening remarks?
Yeah, thanks, Ramesh. Essentially, I certainly agree with all the points which Christine has been making with respect to what is happening in the industry. And from a service provider, solutions provider space, I'm essentially working across the globe, looking at how do we essentially support many of these industries to adapt Industry 4.0. From a point of view of looking at productivity improvement, quality improvement, and things like. But one of the things which we normally face when we look at is many of the cases, 95% of the cases, it is how do we essentially go and convert some of those legacy equipments in the shop floor in order to adapt to these changes, in order to pull data so that you could make some meaningful decisions in order to help them create those kind of productivity improvements. But main challenges we have been facing so far has been not with respect to starting with the POC. I think a couple of years back, everywhere we go, we need to start with the POC. And beyond POCs, it used to be really difficult for us to move forward, essentially because people are looking at ROI. But thanks to COVID, I think people have started looking at pilots. But the bottleneck what we face now is from pilot to rollout. When an enterprise has got multiple, plans, it needs a board approval because there is a good amount of spend that is required for a rollout to happen. So in order to create a business case to help them do that is becoming definitely a challenge. So that is where we are looking at consultants who can help to create that end-to-end picture for them to see that if they do a rollout across the globe or across multiple plants across the globe, how do they essentially can get the benefits. And this needs to be a very clear business case, which the board looks at before approving it. So that's the bottleneck we are facing today from a rollout perspective, Ramesh.
Okay, so you're saying that the opportunity is there, conviction about the opportunity is there. You moved away from POCs to pilots, but the next big thing is to move from pilots to scale up and roll out. Okay, that is very helpful. Ashish, your comments on where you see this going?
I think the challenge of going third on the panel is that, you have the same points to make. And I'm so happy that, what I would have said, my panelists also, kind of emphasized on the same points. We, from Honeywell perspective, we've been in existence for 115 plus years now, and mostly on the industrial side. So we made physical things, it was a brick and mortar stuff that we did. But we, like many other companies, wanted to pivot towards, moving towards more software and therefore more software industrial. And we struggled pre-pandemic because there was a hard sell that most people were doing. And you just heard about POCs and stuff. We went through exactly the same exercise. But what we see now is that the need is created by the pandemic, which is a good thing. Instead of we taking the people to the work needs to come to the people. And all the points that we just heard about, remoting the work, making it accessible from anywhere, all of that is going to give rise to the IIoT as a concept, and it'll catch up. I guess when it comes to the specific barriers or challenges, as you asked, Ramesh, one thing that I saw is many a times people try and deploy the existing technologies. It could be on the sensors, it could be on data collection, it could be on cloud, just for the sake of applying that technology in the pilots. What would be nice is we truly solve a problem that either was unsolved earlier using all these technologies, or we solve it in a manner that it becomes much more easier, much more efficient, much more productive. And therefore bringing the aspects in the industrial world. Typically we see three things in the industrial world. You have the big assets in industries like oil and gas, refining, petrochemicals, minerals, metals, mining, power plants, etc. Lots of big equipment. You have lots of assets there. You have people who have the expertise and who then operate on those processes and those equipment. And then there is a workflow that needs to happen in terms of tactical work that needs to be done, and also decisions that need to be made at the corporate houses on supply chains and what have you. I think what we are looking at is how do we solve the problems that existed before and could not be solved, but with IIoT, we could solve it better. And therefore, if we can figure that out, that will remove a lot of barrier in the mindset of the people. That's how I look at it.
Very helpful. I think rather than technology is searching for a problem, come back from the problem and see how it can be solved, right? That's
right.
That's probably the important thing. Sangeet, if I can switch to you have a very different vantage point. I mean, you're a startup. So is this getting easier for startups in this space, or are you still trying to evangelize what you guys do?
Thanks, Ramesh. Yes, we have advantage of being a startup and agile and nimble and try out on some of the technologies which are not that matured to solve the problem of the customers. So I come from a different background. I come from warehouse background. So factories do require Industry 4.0 technologies, but also warehouses are becoming today the next factories. And the kind of automation and equipment which you see going into these warehouses, these are definitely, and the kind of investment which is happening, these are definitely next factories. And because it is a new challenge which is coming up, these industry 4.0 technologies in terms of all sensors and robotics and process flow and warehouse, the software coming together to solve the problem. It is more, so customers are happy to imbibe these technologies. This is what we have experienced so far. So there are, let us say, I'll give you an example. So forklifts have existed for last 40 years, 50 years. And it was supposed to carry the goods from one place to another. It was never supposed to give the intelligence of what is happening in the warehouse, where from the materials are getting picked, what materials are getting picked, and what kind of traffic density is there, etc. And with some sensor technologies, Bluetooth, etc., and with software, we can get huge insight into the working of the warehouse and improving those warehouse parameters to effectively bring value to the customer. So these are the things which we have been doing successfully, getting great sensor technology, communication technology, and making sense out of the data which we are capturing with these sensor technologies. One of the questions which was asked is, where are we seeing challenges in implementing these technologies, and particularly in Indian context? So one of the places where we see a challenge, apart from conventional equipment, and no one will throw the conventional equipment in factories, but in warehouses where it is new, one of the challenges is the maturity of these sensors. So at least that is one thing which we see very often, and where sometimes it is not the industrial IoT which is in application, it is IoT where we use the consumer sensors and use those technology, because you don't need, these are not mission critical processes where you need those high-end sensors which should not fail anytime. But these sensors have to improve in reliability. At least this is one of the learnings that we have had from the last 5 years.
Wonderful. No, that's useful context setting. If I may just throw some questions to each of you. Christine, you have a vantage point across countries and across sectors. So if you can just lay out for me, where do you see high adoption, either sector, country, where do you see low adoption, and what if you will are the characteristics that separate the two?
Yes, so frankly, we are seeing across the globe the increased focus and the increased need for digital transformation. Now, to your point, there's different areas where different countries are more focused in different ways. So one of the things that we conduct on an annual basis, and we can see how they've shifted year over year. We have over 500 different companies that we've surveyed around the globe, as well as over 500 unique participants, from operations leadership to operators on the floor, and that's augmented with our own experience of working with our ecosystem and deploying. And what we see around the globe is an increased investment in digital transformation. And most companies either had plans that they were working and now are accelerating them coming into 2021 and the need for it, or they are actually testing. So there are some companies in some countries, areas where there is more proof of concept kinds of things or pilots happening, but there is more active investment. We are seeing particular industries doing more than others. One of the areas where there's been quite a bit of disruption, and thus the need for increase, frankly, across the supply chain and then in the operations itself, improvement, is in the automotive industry. And of course, that there's quite a bit of that in the European region, the US region, and in those spaces, you see the focus on the infrastructure that needs to be in place and/or the data, and how they might utilize their footprint to drive that. And the supply chain disruptions and the labor disruptions have further accentuated that. We also see an increased focus, frankly, on sustainability and the policies, whether that's government-driven or enterprise-driven relative to addressing the climate change and concerns. We do see that as an increased focus, and by the way, you're seeing that more and more global. Now, the timeline might be different for different countries and enterprises, but definitely we are seeing that as a global focus as well. Now, across the globe, there is this focus of organizational agility and resiliency, and how might you use the capabilities of bringing in either improved infrastructure, so really looking at the network and connectivity within the factory, or the use of cloud to edge kind of technology to get access to the data. There is quite a bit of focus, particularly in large manufacturers, in how they are going to do this in order to improve their overall remote visibility, management and maintenance, as well as how do they optimize the overall workflow automation. With that said, across the board, there is a focus on how do I utilize some of these new capabilities, such as machine learning, machine vision, to bring it into my operations for improved defect detection or flow of information across the factory or shop floor. That is happening across the board, and the realization that I can bring this in today, and we are seeing that in all regions, frankly. So a lot of investment happening in this space.
Lots happening, and lots happening all over. Raman,
Yeah.
if I can shift to you, the question I would have is, as a services and solution provider, do you see this as a way of India servicing the world? What, if you will, are India's unique strengths here?
When you look at the global place versus India from a point of view of Industry 4.0 adoption, there are a lot of challenges when you want to implement it in India, essentially because many of the industries have not gone into Industry 3.0 itself for it to jump to 4.0. So many of these have been built for purpose, and when you want to adopt it, there needs to be a lot of customization, and cost is going to be definitely an important factor here when somebody needs to essentially adapt it. So it's going to be really very important, and many of the Indian manufacturers are reaching out definitely to service providers and solution providers to see how we could help them in this journey, because they definitely want to do it, but they want to do it in a way where at some point in time, the traditional things which they have been doing has to coexist with whatever we are doing, and need to leap into the next stage in a gradual manner rather than essentially jump all of a sudden, because they essentially want to do the gradual change there. And that is what we essentially see as something that is happening. But one thing is, when we do some of this solutioning here with respect to converting some of these legacy systems to full data and things like that, we are essentially doing it in such a way that we are able to leverage this across the globe as well, because it is not that only India has this challenge. The challenge is there everywhere, but maybe in India, the legacies are much more legacy compared to that of the developed countries or developing countries. So that is one challenge which we are essentially trying to address. And from a solution point of view, we are trying to build some of those building blocks which can help. And one of the interesting problems we are also seeing is, when you go into a shop floor, there is quite a good amount of connectivity technology that is prevalent today. So from plant to plant, it varies. So you need to essentially create some kind of gateway which will really help to bring in multiple things, and then later stream it as one particular kind of protocol, which essentially can be adopted when you want to do a rollout, because you cannot be customizing it for 10 different factories, which the same enterprise has. And these factories have come up at different points in time. So each one has got a different kind of what you call maturity level. So what we did is we created a kind of assessment framework which really helps to identify what are the various elements which are there in each of those factories. Can you create a baseline so that up to that baseline you might need to customize, but beyond that baseline it can essentially be rolled out, because that is what people look at. Because if I need to do a rollout, it has to be something that I should be able to repeat rather than customize everywhere. The customize cannot be ruled out totally, but customization is required, but it has to be kept to a bare minimum so that we are able to take up the what you call economies of scale when you need to do the implementation part. So my this thing is, yes, whatever we built here can be taken to other countries abroad. When we essentially look at it from a point of view of standardizing them and ensuring that we have building blocks which can really which can be leveraged in order to help the rollout. Because my focus is more from a rollout perspective rather than doing a pilot or a POC, because you can always do that. But rollout is going to be the challenge when you need to essentially want to ensure that we are able to leverage the benefits that are going to come in. Whether it is like what Krishna talked about from a point of view of having image-based solutions to help in the quality part of it, or connectivity solutions in order to ensure that we are able to get the data and improve the OE of the equipment.
Got it. Ashish, if I can shift to you and building on something that Raman just said, is this an opportunity for us to leapfrog directly into Industry 4.0? I mean, do we need to go through the stages? And I guess the related question is, where have you seen real business benefits? You see it on the throughput side, you see it on the quality side. If you can cover those two, right? And from an India perspective, if you can talk about those two things, can we leapfrog, and where is the biggest bang for the buck?
Ramesh, the short answer is absolutely yes. We can leapfrog, and we've done that in other areas. Where we adopted a technology a little late. It came to India a little late, but then we really leapt forward. It's the same thing here. Maybe the industries that we serve, which are the heavy capex intensive industries, there is an element of how do we not just throw away the old investment and therefore retrofit some of the stuff so that we can take it to the Industry 4.0 architecture. I think Raman elaborated on multiple points just now. We have very similar thoughts on as far as taking the industry towards the IIoT or the 4.0 is concerned. I guess I'm going to talk about a little bit more, because the time is right in India right now, where the large companies can afford to do these things, right? I mean, they have the money. Maybe a lot of companies right now are under leveraged on their balance sheet. So I think they will need, the interest rates are low. So people will take some good bets, and this IIoT 4.0 digitization, all of that is in the mix. So I'm very bullish about that. Where I think we need to work as an industry in India is not just looking at the stuff that we have tried outside, maybe in the developed countries, and just bring the same solutions back and apply the same stuff. We will have to also think grounds up and solve the problems that are very unique to India. And there are many such problems that are unique to India. That's where sometimes we probably fall short. That is point number one. Point number two, I would like to say is when the government is pushing for the self-reliance, the mission for Atmanirbhar Bharat, they also want to do it inclusively. So they want to include the small and medium enterprises, as you know, and those have lagged behind in the past because of lack of capital, because of lack of knowledge, stuff like that. Now, can we do something that will be a win-win, which means we provide solutions to these small and medium enterprises that also leapfrog, to get to your question, not just the top and the big companies. And can we therefore do it at the right cost and at the scale at which it will be required. That's an unsolved problem to me as far as IIoT is concerned, and it is a challenge that is up for grabs for everybody, and we can really collaborate on that and make sure that the ecosystem that we will develop is not just for the top of the pyramid, but also for the middle of the pyramid and maybe also for the bottom of the pyramid. I think that's where I would like to express my thoughts. We at Honeywell are working on some of those, and I'm looking forward to some of the other panelists and industry colleagues to collaborate on this problem to be solved. Where do I see examples? The bit that you asked me about, I think it's there in all the industries that we serve. The recent thing that comes to my mind is about the vaccine distribution, which is such a hot topic in the country right now. And we want to make sure that the vaccines are reached in time, the supply chains are properly managed. And over and above that, there is no counterfeiting. There could be a possibility of counterfeiting. So the IIoT concepts that we can apply, when you're transferring the vaccines from the place of manufacture to the warehouses, and then from there to the healthcare centers, etc. You need to manage the ambience in which it is, transported, temperature, humidity, stuff like that. And you can have IIoT concepts which will transmit that data and will always be captured so that you are assured of the quality. And also the counterfeiting, where you can have certain ways in which you can detect whether the shipment which was sent from the manufacturing location is exactly the same as what has reached the healthcare center. So I can go on and on. Each industry has its unique problems, but the concepts of IIoT can be really extended to all of them.
Wonderful. Sangeet, you already referred to sort of one of the challenges, which is maturity of sensors. So do we have the ecosystem in India to enable it, or are there pieces of the ecosystem that are missing? Say, I mean, it's fashionable to compare everything with China. You can compare it with China or with anyone. Saying, where are we in terms of availability of every element of the ecosystem? Say you were going into a warehouse and you wanted to automate it. How Atmanirbhar are we?
Okay, so as far as ecosystem is concerned, and if I compare it with, let us say, China, because we compete with many of these companies outside India, not in India to that extent, but outside India, we see when we manufacture certain equipments and robot in our case, so they have the ecosystem of all the parts. So even the motors would be manufactured, drives, drive cards, sensors, etc. Everything, there would be suppliers for them. For us in India, we have to depend, if we say we will not be taking it from China because of so reason, then we have to depend on suppliers from outside India, mostly European or Japanese suppliers. So that is one thing as far as ecosystem is concerned. Second thing about the ecosystem which I want to point out is in some of the other advanced countries or in China, there would be supply. So if I have to build something, I can take help from my supplier company who can technically help me in solving one part of the problem. Now that luxury, we don't have it to the extent that we would like to have, and that is where Plug-in Alliance might help us in future. Today, if I am facing a problem in building a particular robot, a particular equipment, that even the part which should not be my core, even for that part, I need to build the expertise to build a quality product. And that is where we stand in India as far as ecosystem is concerned. And these ecosystems have come up very rapidly because Industry 4.0 itself is a new concept, and it is a lot of technologies coming together, sensors and communication technology and the cloud and the software, etc. We are very good in the software part of it, and we are gaining the knowledge about, because the new connectivity, new form of connectivity is coming, and that we are gaining knowledge. The sensors, the transducers, the optical thing, that is something we need to build in as far as the ecosystem is concerned in India. And yeah, those ecosystems require a huge amount of investment and huge amount of government support. And I think at this point of time, we are lagging behind as far as that is concerned.
Okay, Sangeet, very, very helpful. I want to now switch a little bit to what can a collaboration like the Plug-in Alliance do? What I'm hearing from all of you is, listen, the time is now. The opportunity is significant. If anything, the pandemic has accelerated adoption. I'm equally hearing from you that there are specific nuances that need to be solved. Sangeet talked about availability of ecosystem. I think, Ashish, you talked about extending it to MSMEs. Raman, you talked about moving from pilot to rollout and establishing the business case. So clearly there is something that needs to be done. So I'm going to go around and say, what in your mind will success for the Plug-in Alliance be? What will keep you interested in a group like this? So Christine, where have you seen other alliances like this? What would your dream vision for Plug-in in India be?
Yes, thanks for the question, Ramesh. So Intel has a long history of building and creating ecosystems to allow for industry transformations to happen. And we've been doing the same here in the industrial sector, whether it's in the manufacturing or utility energy type of space. What we do is we look for these kinds of local alliances that come together. And there are some that go globally, things like the work that's happening in the process automation space. But there are many of these alliances that need to come together to really bring together the ecosystem. And our participation has become an integral part in helping bring together and also supporting having what we call market-ready solutions that are ready that are validated, ready to scale, and have solutions across the various industries. And we've built up an ecosystem in many areas. What I'm so excited about is Plug-in Alliance coming together in India to really bring together the end-to-end capabilities and solutions that are needed to have these, like I said, these market-ready solutions that we have in our ecosystem and in partnership in this alliance to allow for that local scale to solve the local challenges or the local focuses that the industry has. So I'm excited to see the outcomes of this, that collaboration that needs to happen to bring this capability to all ranges of manufacturers and utilities in India-based market.
Raman, what would your expectations be? What is your wish list? What will keep you interested in an alliance like this?
So it's more than expectation. I'm already doing it along with Intel, essentially working with some of the startup alliance partners in order to take it to market. Because what is interesting is like what Sangeet talked about, right? You need an ecosystem which is able to come in to help you rather than start everything grounds up, because that is going to essentially defeat the purpose. So you definitely need some of these niche players who essentially come in as Plug-in Alliance. And we are already working with a couple of them along with Intel in this space. And the interesting thing is we are able to play our part. We are able to plug in algorithms coming from them to create a complete solution and then go for a fast POC, because that is what interest the enterprises today. So if I say that I want to do a POC, can I do it in 4 weeks? Can I do it in 6 weeks? Can I get to see the results before I jump on to the next thing? Because speed definitely matters. And here we are definitely interested in doing this, and we are already doing this. And this would be definitely a game changer from a point of view of seeing adoption in a much faster pace compared to doing it all over from ground up.
No, I'm glad you're already doing it. I completely agree. And this country has had multiple examples of leapfrog, right? We went from no phones to mobile phones. We skipped the phase of landlines. I think something similar may happen with electric vehicles, whereas for a lot of people, the first vehicle that they buy in India could well be an electric vehicle. So I think there are lots of examples, and maybe this is an area where even the alliance can help leapfrog a lot of it. Ashish, you from your vantage, from your vantage point, what would your expectations from an alliance be?
Well, Ramesh, I think I'm the new member here. Today is my first day. So I have to, first
so you have the luxury of dreaming the most.
Yes, maybe. I have the license today. But what I'm really looking for is, just connect with the bright minds in the industry who are like-minded. And, just understand how everybody else is thinking. That will be my starting point, because this is not something that only one company is going to pull off. It's going to require a lot of collaboration for sure. And any company which thinks that they are just going to innovate everything by themselves and they'll become the big gorilla of the industry, that's they are completely mistaken. So that is the first point. I want to connect with the bright minds in the industry. The second thing I would say is there are diverse viewpoints, and that diversity will bring a lot of good ideas, and they may not be a full solution, but they could be good components that could be connected. So connecting the dots by plugging into this system is what I'm looking at as well, so that we can help each other and it is mutually beneficial by sharing and learning from each other. And the last one I would say is maybe in large multinational companies, there can be a mindset of, just bringing in something that is proven elsewhere and then applying it to the local markets. And that, as I made the point earlier, may not be the best way to deal with this. And therefore, how can we encourage the thinking of new products, the thinking of creating something here that is fit for purpose in the Indian market, and therefore scaling it up and sharing that with this alliance is what I'm really looking forward to.
Wonderful. Sangeet, you referred to a few things, but specific expectations from, and you speak on behalf of the startup ecosystem.
Yes. So one of the things which I just pointed out is I would be interested, and or all startups would continue to be interested in being in this alliance. We will get to, if I know that I will get a help where in one particular technology which I am not good at or which I am not supposed to do. So can I take help from some other startup or some other expert in solving that problem for me? So that is one thing which will keep me interested, and I'll be excited about it. The other thing in terms of from the startup perspective, and one of the things which was spoken about is how can we solve the problem of MSMEs and at a cost which is affordable to them, and to make them productive in comparison to other MSMEs anywhere in the world. So that would be another for my one. We will know the problem which needs to be solved, and maybe as a startup, I do not have access to all those problems which are there, which needs to be solved, because I don't have the bandwidth to go to so many companies and so many people. So if I get real challenging problem, and if I am able to solve one or two of them, that would give me or give our company a great boost up. So that is another thing which I would be looking for. And the third thing is, I will be very proud personally if we can solve problem for few MSMEs to make them very, very productive in comparison to productivity level across the world. That would be another thing which would really, really excite me.
Wonderful. Maybe I take the last few minutes to just bring it all together. I would probably make 4 sets of observations. The first is actually the starting point in India is a weak one. I mean, it's quite commonly known that India's manufacturing is punching far below its weight in its GDP, and same with logistics. Okay, I think as a country, Sangeet, we spend 3 to 4% more of our GDP because of inefficient logistics. So we have a little bit of a starting position handicap, because that's where we've come from. That said, I genuinely think that Industry 4.0 could be the leveler for India, because it in a way brings our capabilities to bear. And I really hope this is our leapfrog opportunity. And therefore, we are talking about the right idea at the right time. And like some of you alluded to it, the pandemic has advanced it. The third takeaway I have is that this cannot be around getting solutions from around the world and sticking it into India. It has never worked for us. At the end of the day, there has to be a flavor of India-specific innovation, India-specific solutions that work for the ecosystem in India, that work for the MSMEs in India, and that frankly, come up with solutions for India. And I think in the context of these 3 is where I would make the 4th point, that alliancing is important, right? When the first objective is to grow overall industry, alliancing works, right? It is really about 1 + 1 = 3. If the pie grows, then everyone grows, and we are at a stage where we need to make the pie grow. So I think we are sitting at the launch of the Plug-in Alliance. We are sitting at an appropriate time, and I can see lots of exciting possibilities. I wish all participants the best, and thank you all for being in this panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone.